Once upon a time, in the prosperous kingdom of Zofunda, there reigned a wise and powerful king named Obanifo. He was loved by his people for his fairness, strength, and vision. The only thing the king lacked in his seemingly perfect life was a male heir. His only child was a daughter, the radiant and beloved Princess Adesewa. Princess Adesewa was known throughout the land for her extraordinary beauty, calm spirit, and deep wisdom. Suitors came from far and wide, princes, noblemen, warriors, and wealthy merchants, all hoping to win her hand in marriage. Yet King Obanifo was no ordinary father. He did not want a man of gold or a man of sword for his daughter. He wanted a man of virtue, someone who possessed patience, courage, endurance, loyalty, and the kind of selfless love that could withstand the tests of life and leadership. So one day, the king made a shocking proclamation that rippled across the entire kingdom. The man who will marry my daughter and become the future ruler of Zofunda must first endure 100 strokes of the cane in the town square, publicly. He must neither scream nor beg. He must accept every lash as a symbol of his love, patience, courage, and willingness to endure suffering for another. Should he endure all, I will not only give him my daughter's hand in marriage, but half of my kingdom and everlasting honor. The people gasped. Many whispered that the king had gone too far. Others said he was wise to test the hearts of men in such a rare and profound way. Still, many young men stepped forward, convinced they could endure the test. On the appointed day, a great crowd gathered in the central square of Zofunda. The drums of anticipation beat through the air. Princess Adesewa, veiled in royal blue, watched silently from the palace balcony. Her heart pounded with fear and hope. The first suitor, Ayo the warrior. Ayo was a tall, muscular man, known for slaying wild beasts and protecting villagers. Confident and proud, he stepped forward first. As the lashes began, he stood firm. By the 25th stroke, sweat dripped from his brows. At the 35th, he groaned. By the 45th lash, he shouted, "Enough! I am not a goat to be beaten this way." He walked away in shame and anger. The second suitor, Dimeji the merchant. Dimeji, a wealthy trader with ships that reached distant shores, was next. He saw the princess not just as a woman of beauty, but a way to grow his power. He bore the pain with gritted teeth. But by the 30th lash, his fine robes were torn and his skin bled. At the 40th stroke, he fell to the ground and cried, "This is madness. No woman is worth this." He was carried away. The third suitor, Tade the scholar. Tade was not strong, but he believed his wisdom could guide him through pain. The people whispered among themselves, surely this was a fool's errand for him. With every stroke, he bit his lips. By the 20th, he shook. By the 25th, he wept openly. At the 28th lash, he screamed, "Let the wise choose peace over pain," and crawled away in tears. One by one, more men tried and failed, 12 suitors in total, each bearing noble titles, strong bodies, or wealthy means. Yet none possessing the heart to endure the test to its end. The crowd fell silent as the last suitor walked away. All eyes turned to the king. King Obanifo rose from his throne, heart heavy, face drawn in disappointment. He looked over his people and spoke with a trembling voice. "Is there no man in Zofunda who is patient enough to suffer for love? No heart strong enough to protect with pain? No soul humble enough to endure?" He shook his head slowly. "What shall I tell my forefathers? That I raised a generation of weaklings? Must my daughter wither without a partner worthy of her crown?" As the king finished speaking, a soft cry echoed through the square. It came from Princess Adesiwa herself. With tears streaming down her cheeks, she threw off her veil and cried out, "Father, if no man can marry me, then let me die. I shall not live in shame. If none is worthy, then I am unworthy of life." Gasps filled the air. Women screamed. The king staggered and clutched his chest. "No, my child, that is an abomination. You must not," he cried. Palace guards rushed forward. Ministers fell to their knees. The queen sobbed uncontrollably. Elders began chanting, pleading with the gods. Children wept. The whole kingdom trembled as the threat of royal suicide loomed over them like a cursed cloud. The king turned to the crowd once more, falling to his knees. His royal staff slipped from his hand. With deep grief, he cried out, "Is there no one? Will no one save my daughter? Must we watch beauty perish because men have failed in courage?" All eyes scanned the gathering, hoping, praying that one man would step forward. But no one did. Just as the air thickened with sorrow and despair in the royal courtyard, and as hope drained from the eyes of the people, a small voice rose from the crowd. "I will take the strokes." Gasps rippled through the gathering. All eyes turned to the speaker, only to see a strange and unlikely figure step forward. Obilagwu, the village dwarf. With a head unusually large and a stature barely reaching the waist of an average man, Obilagwu's presence immediately ignited laughter and ridicule. "Is this a joke?" someone jeered. "Let the wind not blow him away at the fifth stroke." But Obilagwu stood firm, his chest out, his steps steady. He was a man of sharp mind and unshakable spirit, despite his physical limitations. The king looked at him with surprise, uncertainty stirring in his regal eyes. "You?" King Obanifo asked, stepping down from his throne to meet him directly. "Do you understand what you are asking for?" "I do, my king," Obilagwu replied without flinching. "Let me save the princess. Let me save you. Let me save the kingdom from this disgrace." The king hesitated, then with a respectful nod, gestured for a table to be brought forward. "Stand here," he said, "so all may see your face and your courage." Obilagwu climbed onto the table, standing upright, his head glistening under the sun. The crowd burst into laughter again, pointing and shaking their heads. Even the guards struggled to hide their amusement. But the king, moved by this act of daring loyalty, offered Obilagwu a handshake in front of all. "May your courage speak louder than your height," the king whispered. Then the flogging began. The first stroke landed, and Obilagwu flinched but said nothing. The second came. Then the third. 10, 20, 30. The courtyard, once ringing with cruel laughter, began to fall into silence. No one expected him to last even 10, yet he pressed on, lips sealed, eyes burning with determination. At the 50th stroke, a few villagers began clapping softly. By the 60th, the guards lowered their eyes in awe. At the 70th, the princess herself stood, tears streaming down her face. "Go, Obilagwu," some shouted, "endure." By the time the 80th stroke landed, the crowd had transformed. Cheering replaced laughter. Praise drowned out mockery. Obilagwu had shifted the tide of history with sheer will. Then suddenly, 4 of the king's chiefs stepped forward and bowed low before him. "Your Majesty," said Chief Omukunda, his voice urgent, "forgive our interruption, but we must speak with you before the flogging continues." King Obanifo raised an eyebrow. Is it not clear he is close to fulfilling the task? Why halt now? Chief Adabaro spoke up, his tone bitter. because it will shame every able-bodied man in this land if a dwarf becomes heir to your throne and husband to the princess. How will history remember us? What will other kingdoms say? That we stood by as a small man of twisted bone claimed a prize no warrior could bear? The crowd quieted, whispers spread like wildfire. The king's gaze shifted from the chiefs to the brave figure still lying on the table, battered but unbroken. A decision stood before him. Would he uphold the challenge he himself had declared, honoring the only man with the heart to see it through? Or would he bend to pride and hierarchy and rob Obilagwu of his earned place? The wind held its breath, and so ends Part 2 of Strokes for Love. Will the king let honor triumph over pride? Or will tradition and prejudice cast a dark shadow on Obilagwu's victory? The palace square was quiet. All eyes were on King Obanifo as he stood between two strong chiefs. His face was calm, but his heart was heavy. Chiefs Durojaye and Makanjuola had just spoken to him. They didn't want Obilagwu, the big-headed dwarf, to finish the flogging. They felt it would be a shame if a man so small and strange-looking married the princess. The king thought long and hard. He looked at Obilagwu again, the little man standing bravely on the table, covered in sweat and blood, but still standing tall. He remembered his own words. Whoever could endure all the flogging would marry the princess and become rich and powerful. After some silence, King Obanifo raised his hand. "I will not go back on my words," he said. "Let the flogging continue." The crowd roared with excitement. But the chiefs were not done. Chief Durojaye stepped forward again. "Your Majesty," he said loudly, "we believe the floggers are not hitting this man as hard as they hit the others. Maybe they feel sorry for him because of his size. That is not fair." The crowd gasped. Obilagwu looked up at the king without fear. The king rubbed his beard and nodded slowly. "Then let it be fair," he said. "I command that 30 more strokes be added to his punishment. Let everyone see that this man won the prize with honor." The chiefs smiled. They were sure Obilagwu would fall. He had already taken 80 hard strokes. His small frame looked weak, his tunic torn and soaked with blood. How could he take 30 more? But Obilagwu nodded. "I am ready," he said with a faint voice. "Let it be done." The flogger stepped forward again. The cane rose and fell. Each stroke echoed through the square. Obilagwu winced, groaned, and trembled, but he did not fall. His hands held the edges of the table tightly. His eyes were shut, his teeth clenched. People who once laughed now watched in silence. Some wept, others prayed. The princess herself was crying in the background, holding her chest. Stroke 90, stroke 100, stroke 110. The flogger paused. He looked at the king, who nodded for the final one. Stroke 110, done. Obilagwu collapsed to his knees on the table, breathing heavily. He had done it. He had taken not just 100, but 110 strokes, and he was still alive. The entire square exploded with loud cheers. People clapped, shouted, and danced. Women brought out drums and began to sing. Even the royal guards were smiling. King Obanifo stood and lifted his staff high into the air. "Obilagwu has proven himself," he shouted. "He has shown courage, patience, and love. He shall marry the princess and become heir to my throne." The princess, Princess Ifunanya, walked slowly to the table. Her gown flowed like a river. She reached up and took Obilagwu's hand. The crowd became quiet again as the small man looked at the beautiful princess. Then, softly, Obilagwu kissed her. The people shouted louder than before. Obilagwu was carried from the table, and wrapped in clean royal cloth. The king himself placed a golden necklace around his neck. "You are not just a husband to my daughter," the king said. "You are now a prince of this land." The chiefs, though surprised, bowed before Obilagwu. They knew the people had spoken. They had seen with their own eyes what courage really looked like. From that day, Obilagwu was known across kingdoms. Children were named after him. Songs were sung in his honor. The king gave him land, gold, and authority, and most of all, he gave him love. Lesson: this story teaches us that true strength does not lie in size or looks. It lies in the heart, in courage, in patience, and in love. Obilagwu may have looked small, but his heart was greater than many. He believed in love, and he fought for it. No matter who you are, you can do great things if you don't give up. Subscribe to the channel now and share this amazing story of courage, sacrifice, and destiny.